Good morning. This is 𝐕𝐴𝐈���, and this is Shyamala Prayaga of Digital Assistant Academy, and we're both a little tired this week. We've had a full week, and we're gonna talk to you about that. If those of you who don't know Shyamala, she is Ford's lead autonomous or conversational AI autonomous voice designer for their autonomous lines. Wow, it has been a long week, hasn't it, Shyamala?
Definitely, it has been.
don't usually trip over my words this bad. And I support Shyamala's effort in Digital Assistant Academy by making sure that the people who graduate are ready to find that job. And I am also the head of a learning and development capability for a company called Onward Search. So we are busy women. We've got 4 jobs between the two of us, right? So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to have a serious chat about, is somebody, as well known as Shyamala, you would think that, impervious to anything that happens, right? Well, we're going to talk about how she juggles 2 full-time jobs, right? For lack of a better word, plus a marriage, plus a child who is still in school. How old is your son? Let's not say his name.
He's
online,
10.
He's 10. So yeah, he's still young. But before all of that, I had an experience with Alexa this morning, and I almost got on this morning, Shyamala, asking you if we could change the name of this show to, Alexa, Siri, and me, because there are so many questions that come into my mind about how this technology works. So this morning, Shyamala, after I turned my alarm off, I took a shower, went back into the bedroom to get dressed, and I said, "Hey, Alexa, what's the weather going to be like today?" Alexa told me what the weather was going to be like today. I didn't say boo. She continued on after she gave me the weather. She said, "Hey," and my first name is Paula, for those of you who don't know me. "Hey, Paula, would you like me to tell you the weather every day after you turn off an alarm?" Or something like that. Actually, I just looked at her. And I'm looking at this smart speaker as though, there's a pulse. And so at what point, Shyamala, does my questions, does my behavior become a pattern, right? Become a, what's the word I'm looking for? Become just a programmed
pattern,
behavior, if you will. A pattern. So what's going on with that?
So see, there is no definite answer for that one. Like, okay, after X number of times, that is the company strategy which they might have. Like if the user has asked, and they may have programmed it with a specific number in mind. So there is no one specific number we can say when systems will understand this. So it's more like you've been turning off your alarm every day and asking for weather information. Just today you did not ask, right? And all of a sudden you turned off the alarm, and now it realized that you've been asking that maybe for 10 days, 30 days, or something like that. So that's why it offered you the weather information. So it could pretty much depend on the company's strategy, like what is that number they decide, or it's users learned behaviors, right? Like you've been asking for weather information for so many times that the system now knows that you always want to know that information. So it is offering up that option to you.
So there's no set time, like after the 6th time, after the 3rd time.
It pretty much depends. Yeah, it pretty much depends. I know, yeah. So there's no set time, like I mentioned. Like the companies can decide how early they want or how late they want. For example, we also look at voice advertisements, right? Like that is coming up pretty soon, and voice commerce also is coming up soon. So when I used to work for VoiceBox Technology, we were looking at how do we design advertisements. Like we don't want to push too much of advertisement to the user. So we were like, okay, if the user is asking for a specific kind of thing X number of times, and we define that X depending on some of the criterias. Like
I was going to ask, what's the X? What was that for advertisements? What's the X? What was the X?
So, for example, if you've been asking for nearby food restaurants almost every day, right, for a week or 10 days or something like that, which means like, yeah, you're pretty much interested in ordering online. So why don't I offer up some sort of coupon to you? Right. So sometimes the learning behavior could be just 10 days. Sometimes it could be more than that. It could be like a month or so, because we don't have enough data to say like this person really likes, because we don't want to annoy the user immediately, right? So there
Right.
are these kind of things. So the X can vary depending on different criteria, the domain, and the use case and stuff like that.
So that leads me to my next question. Voice is not new. It's been around for a little while now. So how are they able to now start establishing some of those patterns in requests or human behavior?
It's always been there, right? So if you look at Amazon, right, when you order something, you purchase something, you're already your behavior and pattern is recorded,
Hmm.
right? What kind of products have you, and based on that Amazon suggests you, like, because
Yeah,
you
that's true.
ordered this, this is the thing. So this is not something new, like learning users behaviors and patterns and things like that. And it's pretty much similar kind of concepts in voice. Like, there's nothing else which is going on, it's just the natural language processing piece, where it is understanding what you like, and based on that offering up to help you with other aspects, right? And the machine learning aspects of things. So it's the same even in voice. The only difference is, in voice your spoken words needs to be converted to understand your intent in order for me to now scrape a pattern out of that.
Is that what you do? Is that what you do? Is that part of a conversational AI designer's job? Do they think of that, or is that another role altogether?
It's conversational designers job are not set defined at this moment, because we have very limited resources and skills available. It's kind of mixed, right? As a designer, I'm constantly looking at, okay, how long the session lasted and where did the session end, and look at the learned patterns and behaviors of the users. So for example, if let's say I've as a user, you've been using just weather information. Although my assistant provides a lot more information, my assistant also provides you information about food ordering and other things. And now you've just been asking weather information. So what's going on there? Why are you not looking at the other? So as a designer, I need to go back and look at, like, why is Lee not looking at other options or other features available? What's going on here? So maybe I'll have to go back and say, like, okay, maybe it is a discoverability issue because we have not figured like this is a feature, or maybe Lee has tried it once and she did not like it. So analytics is always part of a designer's job to understand, but it's in the traditional world, it's a mix, like product managers, product owners, they would work very closely to understand these kind of things. In some companies, you have a dedicated data scientist who's going to slice and dice the data and work with the designers to make sure that the right kind of inputs and things are there. So there's no preset defined kind of thing like a conversational designer will do this. It's kind of mix.
So let's talk about your week this week, shall we? Shyamala, thank you for that. That was very interesting information. So,
Thank you.
women look at other women in admiration who have a high profile career, who are on international speaking engagements, they're raising a family, they have a marriage, they're taking care of a home. The question is always, how do you do it? So we're going to take this conversation the rest of the day, the rest of this piece, to say, how do you do it? How do you put it all together? And then what happens when a bump occurs in the middle of your routine, which is exactly what happened this weekend, right? Or this week,
Oh
I
yeah, oh
should
yeah.
say.
This week has been crazy, definitely. So see, I would say it's not one person's job. So, like you always say, behind every successful man there is a woman, right? I would say in my case, it's the other way around. Like, behind my success, I have a man who's taking care of the family and always managing the entire household, taking care of my son. He quit his career to support mine from the last 7 years, just to make sure that my son gets the best of the experience, like being a family and not being away kind of thing, because it's kind of crazy when both spouses are working,
Yeah.
and no one is there to take care of the family or kid. So he kind of sacrificed so that early on, growing up, my son has someone to look up to. And he would take care of the kitchen, he would take care of the laundry, cooking. So even I remember when we were not working from home and we used to go to office, he would make sure my lunch is packed on time. because I used to leave by this time. Like I was already on road by 8 o'clock, which means that by 7:30, 7:45 ish, I'm already out of the house. So he used to make sure my food is available, everything is ready. So I never felt that pain because although I have so many other things going on and all, his support was always there, emotionally, mentally, and with all of the things, the chores and all of that. Now, so that is how it is. Like when people are successful, we just look at the success, but we don't look at how many people are behind the success. Like there is a family always taking care, friends and everyone taking care. And that is why anyone is able to be successful, right? And if someone says like they have done everything single-handedly and been successful, I will question that, because that is not the case. That is not the case. Like you may not realize, maybe not your family, maybe some friend, or maybe someone else. You need someone, a support system, in order for you to be successful. Now,
I agree.
what happens if there's a bump? Like just this week we had that. Sunday we all slept, normally, as doing our chores, watching the movie, and all of those things. All of a sudden, early morning, 3 a.m. Monday, my husband wakes up with severe pain, and I've never seen him that way, never ever in my life. So, of course, it was a very nightmare for me, I would say. So. I mean, he was in severe pain. We had to call the 911, and then we had to take him to the ER. And since then, he's been like on bed, with pain and medication and all of those things. Now, all of a sudden, because of this, my routine was disturbed because, okay, Monday. I mean, I would not realize all the things going on in the,
In
like
the background. In the
background,
background.
right? Like taking care of my son, making lunch for
Yeah.
him, breakfast for him, and feeding him. Because all I'll do is get up in the morning, and 8 o'clock, boom, here's my meeting, and my lunch would be on time. Sometimes he would actually give me the lunch here, when I'm working, so I would not even have to go down and get my breakfast or lunch or anything. So all of a sudden, and I was not planned, prepared like for these kind of circumstances. So of course, it was very difficult for me, because now Monday morning, when we got up, it was a hustle bustle, and I'm like, okay, hold on, I have a meeting at 9 o'clock, and I have to make breakfast for him, and I also have to make lunch, because from 9 till 5 I had like back to back meetings. So where do I fit in like cooking and making sure my son has food on time and all of those things? So it was not just me hustling and bustling. I also had to make sure my son is hustling and bustling, because I had no other ways. So there was a lot going on throughout, and of course there were hits and misses. Like too many things were there, and I was multitasking. Not that I don't multitask, but I multitask in a different way. But this was like in the kitchen, cooking, and at the same time attending my meeting, and making sure that other things are in place, and all of that kind of thing. And then in the background yelling at my kid like, okay, eat fast, and all of those things.
You're on my watch now. Let's move it. We don't have time to enjoy those flowers. Put them down. Keep moving. So yep, go ahead.
I would say like, because when we were not prepared, it was a very much a difficult week for me just to get back to, like, how do I do this kind of thing. Today was a little better as compared to Monday when I prepared everything, kept it. And then, I was like, okay, told my son, you just need to do, I have this voice chat Friday thing, and I'm not I'll not be available to, like, bug you, eat, and all. So please make sure that you get ready and eat. So he's been responsible that way. So I think it's all the expectation setting which we'll have to do on all of the end, starting from ourselves.
So, I mean, this is what we've had to deal with for the past year and a half with COVID.
Absolutely.
The COVID was a huge bump and a long bump, right? A long, high bump in our lives. And so it disrupted everything. But for you, not only is COVID still an issue, but now you've got your partner who takes care of everything, the back office stuff of your home.
Yep.
I mean, that's pretty
That's
harsh.
really important. That is for sure.
So imagine, Shyamala, if he wasn't able to stay home and do what he did all during COVID. I mean, that's a huge help, right? This is where a lot of people were struggling over this past year, and especially women. What would you say to a woman who, I mean, you're pretty prominent in your field. So, what would you say to a woman who might not be as prominent in the field, who's really struggling? What advice would you give her to help find that balance?
See, first of all, I mean, I've seen a lot of people when there's a problem, they would just get into this give up mode, saying
Mm,
that I can only do this and this is the only thing. And they would rather, look at the problems more than the solution. Like, how do I do? And I have seen that happening so many times with so many people. I have a neighbor here, and both husband and wife works, and they've been working from home with the COVID situation. They are at home, but they still have to order food every day from outside.
mm,
And they're like, I'm not getting time even to do any of the stuffs, like, and their lifestyle routine, everything is so disturbed.
yeah,
So they're like, I can only focus on one thing. I can either focus on the kitchen or I can focus on my career, and I decide to choose that. And then I've also seen some other people who have completely quit the job because they are not able to manage both the things, like, the home and the work.
yeah,
So you need to find that, like, what are you, because one person is ambitious and they want to be successful, the other person want to, but the circumstances are pushing them. So you need to first of all find that balance. That's what I would say. Like, it's very difficult. I'm not in your shoes. It's very difficult for me to be in another person's shoes. Maybe I'm grateful for all the privileges I have, touch wood, but every person has something grateful they can be grateful for. Working from home is a blessing in itself,
yeah.
right? Many people don't even get that option. They have to be on the fields all the time. But for people who are able to work from home, stay at home, that is the blessing. You just need to find time and proper planning, and you'll be able to be successful both personally and professionally. That's
Yeah.
what I learned in this week. Like, I never planned for such a disaster where I will have to be in the kitchen in the mornings, juggling and all, or taking care of other aspects which he used to. But the moment we planned, it kind of worked out.
So it's your situation is even more interesting. There are families who work together. They have a business together. So you guys have a business together. You have this life together. You have this full-time job. You're with him. You can't get away. Like you it is just there. There have to be hiccups, right, in your day, in your communications. What is your baseline rule for saying this is how we're going to manage difficult situations? Do you even have a process around? I can't imagine that you don't. Like here's the rule of engagement. So if we're actually going to be doing this, this is what this is going to be like. Do you have rules of engagement?
I mean, basically, it's not like written kind of thing, but it's more verbal and understanding based. Like,
Yeah.
okay, every day, for example, my husband takes my son for his activities and classes, most of the days. And now he also took over an evening job. So all of a sudden, there was a switch, like, doing the evening jobs. So initially it was like cooking was his thing, utensils and everything was his things. I would just take care of the business and my podcast, my meetings, my conferences, travel, and all of those things. Now there was no set rule, like, okay, go back to the rule book and say, like, okay, if he starts working in the evening, what should we do?
There's no user flow. Is that what you're
Right?
telling me? There's no
No, there's no
user
user
flow.
flow,
There's
but
no
it's a
use case
basic.
scenario. There's no. This is not according to this sprint. This was not supposed to happen during this sprint.
No.
Have you had that conversation yet? Like I would have had that Monday. I'm sorry. This story is not in my agile book here.
I did say like that kind of disturbed the entire plan, but nevertheless,
You told him that.
I was my
What did he say? Double down in pain. What did he say?
he was like, okay, but yeah, imagine what happens when you are sick. I was like, that's true, right? Like, in addition to all the things, he also needs to take care of myself. Like, when I was dealing with the surgeries last year and prior years, like, he had extra works. And I'm like, okay, now I understand, like what you went
Now
through.
you understand. Now you understand. A pandemic
It's
didn't
always,
do it, but when
see,
he got sick, it did it.
it's always like empathy. When we talk about empathy, what we say,
Yes.
we have to get into the user's shoes.
Yeah.
It's very easy to say get into a user's shoe to empathize with them, but you would never get into the user's shoes just in an imaginary way. Like, even if I imagine, like, oh, okay, if this happens, what? It's very easy to say, but that's not the same thing.
Yeah.
So now, when you say, this was actually like getting into his shoes
Yeah. Literally.
and seeing the world, and this gave a completely different kind of experience to me, right? So I feel like that's how it is, and that's how it is supposed to be. Like when we talk about empathy, it's not just high level talking thing. It has to be like, you need to get into that. So that's what I learned. So there's no strict rules like I mentioned, but yeah, we did I mean, without any rules, we had a quick switch. It took a little bit of bump in initially, but now it's kind of smooth. Like Monday was terrible, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, things started to get better, and today it was like much better
So
because I was much more planned.
yep. You know what you just demonstrated, right? One of the skills that is highly sought, especially after COVID, is called the agility quotient. So
Mhm.
your agility quotient is way up there. So companies realized that they had to pivot big time during the, now you've got, what was it? I don't know if it was Prada or Yves Saint Laurent or one of them, but Louis Vuitton. I
Mhm.
can't remember, one of the high profile fashions turned their manufacturing plant into a mask production plant. I mean, companies were doing that right and
Mhm.
left. So, and now we realize how important agility is in an employee. How quickly can you pivot? How quickly can you change? How quickly can you adapt? And how quickly can you acknowledge the need to change and adapt?
Oh
That
yeah.
to me is the kicker right there. So I want to circle this back to women. Right, I posted a Naomi Mercer, who you may or may not know her. She is the head of DEI for the Banking Association. She testifies before Congress about accessibility and diversity and equity for the banking institution. She posted an article about a week or so ago about the struggle that women had during this COVID. That a lot of them are not getting jobs. They had to leave because they made that choice, right? That I need to stay home and take care of my family so that the other person can go out to work. It just made more sense in that particular, but now they're having a hard time finding jobs again. Now you're a hiring manager. So how could they position themselves in your mind that shows that they've got the agility, that they've got the ability to learn, to do the commitment to get back into it? What would you want to hear from that type of candidate?
So, see, because someone quit their job for a personal reason, because that was what the situation demanded at that time, I would not look at it as like a gap or, something which is to be questioned, because, well, life happens. Everyone needs to do that, what is important for them. During the moment when COVID happened, uh, they had to, prioritize what is more important for them at that moment of time, and now they are trying to get back. So if they are able to convince me, like, how they are able to switch the gears quickly and when needed come back and all of those things, and as long as they have the functional skills and the non-functional skills which is required, doesn't really matter like why they quit and how long they quit, and why they are trying to get back now.
Good for you. I think that's I think the point there is that it doesn't need to be questioned beyond, I just needed to take a break.
Yeah.
And focus on what you can do. Focus on the results. So that's exactly what I coach anybody who I work with, say, just focus on the results. Leave everything else
It's
behind.
kind of very important, right? It's very
Yeah.
important. Like, there's a notion that if a person has gap, they have become non workable, which is kind of weird because, well, the person might not have done work 9 to 5 at an office setup, but still they are doing something. The skills are still there. Some of the skills are acquired, some of the skills comes by default. Like, no one told me that you have to become a leader. Leadership comes to me naturally, right? Or no one told me like you have to be curious or empathetic, or you have to stand for these kind of things. Those are part of my personality. No one can take those out. Every person has those kind of traits, right? Just
Right.
because I got a gap of X years doesn't really mean that I do not have those qualities anymore. I still have it. Maybe I need an opportunity to demonstrate that.
I think that's our next conversation. What traits are baked into your DNA? So I should qualify that. What work traits, right? What are the professional characteristics that are baked into your DNA under any and all circumstances? And there are things that can't be taught, right? There are just certain things that cannot be taught. What are those things? You mentioned empathy. Do you think empathy can be taught?
I can teach empathy to a person, but just very, very high level. Like, okay, for example, I constantly keep teaching my son that you have to be empathetic about certain things. You have to be empathetic, right? So he hears that thing, but unless and until it comes to him by default, he would just hear and he'll be like, okay, yeah, I know, I understand that, right? So to certain point, some of the things you can teach, you can tell them why empathy is important, but it's a part of the personality. For example, when I was a kid, it may sound very funny, but when I was a kid and in our neighborhood, there was this squirrel who died. Okay. And all of a sudden, I was like, God, this squirrel does not have a family. Who will do the funeral? It was so funny. My friends and I, we did the funeral for the squirrel. Okay. Because I was feeling sorry for it. How many people would do that, right? They would just I mean, now when I see here in United States, everywhere on the roads, especially during the summertime, I would see one or the other animal dead on the road. That's it. But what are we doing? People are just rushing or going fast. But I've also seen some people, when rows of ducks are passing by, they would stop here, and
Stop
I would
traffic.
really like it, like that's okay, even if the traffic is stopped, but they make sure. So sometimes even if a cat or something is crossing by, they would stop. But some people would just don't care. So how do you now go back and teach that person, like, no, you have to be empathetic to all the beings, you have to make sure all the beings are equal, right? So don't do this. You cannot teach that. You can tell them, but it has to come personally to you to preach that or practice that. And that's what I feel like most of the qualities. I can teach functional skills to a person, like, okay, in order to become a conversational designer, you need to have these kind of skill sets, you need to have designing skill sets, you need to understand how to do interaction design, blah blah blah. But I cannot teach them curiosity. I cannot teach them, agility. I cannot teach them all of these things. It is something which is part of your personality. Some people panic. I had a attack, because I've never seen my husband in pain on early morning Monday. But immediately, I switched to chaos. So you need those things. You cannot teach anyone. That comes naturally as a personality. Although how much you think, some of that could be part of the upbringing, of course, but yeah.
Interesting. So we've covered a lot this morning, haven't we, Shyamala?
We did.
So the part about teaching empathy, though, I think that there are there are innate skills within us. They're baked into our DNA, right? The way that we believe. But then again, it could be taught, right? It could be learned behaviors. So I think that it's really hard when we look at user experience. Are we looking at, because there's biases that we have to consider as we're designing these products, right? So how do you take into account when you're designing and this is a question for our next section, and because it's a big question, how do you take into account biases when you are designing a product, especially with a voice, right? So that, I think, is our conversation for the next session, and we'll see if we can't get somebody to join us by then. In the interim, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us during this Voice Chat Friday. Shyamala, I know you've had a heck of a week. Thank you for hopping online and being a trooper about it. I hope your husband is doing well. I hope your son is doing okay with all of this. And you get a chance are you going to take a 4-day weekend or a 3-day weekend?
Yeah, we have off till Monday, so.
So you're off today too?
We have half day today, so
Okay.
I have to do a couple of things the first half. So, and after that, I'll be just with my family. So,
by the
looking
way,
forward.
Good. By the way, one of our watchers, one of our fans, actually got a job at Ford in learning user experience. So
amazing.
Yes. So you're a great influence and a great brand reputation, a great brand builder for Ford and women in that organization. So good job. Have a nice weekend. And I will see you next Friday for the Voice Chat Friday at 8 a.m. Enjoy your holiday weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.